Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, good. How are you?
What's going on? Did you go to Denmark or something yesterday?
Yeah, got to Copenhagen and back safely.
Oh, good.
Yeah, amazing. And it was the last night, it turned out. We got there and the gig was the next night. And the day of the gig, they changed the lockdown laws,
Hmm.
but we got in under the wire. They were changing it the day after the gig.
From the UK side or the Denmark
No,
side?
no, Denmark side.
Right.
They restricting. They're doing a curfew at midnight, which wouldn't have affected me. At clubs, so clubs to close down. Anything standing was 50 people in a room. I don't know if it affected theatres, but this was like 13,000 people
Right.
in an
Wow.
arena. So it would have it would have been quite a panic, but I was already there. It's just driving me mad. The rules changing
Hmm.
every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I just, yeah, the anxiety. I wake up now with a knot in my stomach thinking, what's gone wrong? I go, oh, I've got that. I might have that gig or I might have to travel to. And it's like, well, you know me, I want everything my own way. I've planned it. I want it.
Yeah.
I want, I know better than anyone how to run this world. So if someone makes a slight mistake that affects me, oh
Well,
God.
live events are their unique form of stress. I just hate them. I
Yeah,
mean, you have it
it's
totally
great
dialed in,
because
but it's the only thing. It's the only thing that I feel like it's just a huge hassle to cancel and reschedule. Everything
it
else is
breaks my
fungible.
heart.
Yeah.
And I had to cancel the Toronto gig, and we tried everything. We'd already put it in a venue that was twice as big as the tickets because where like months ago. So I'd sold 10,000 tickets in the right sized venue. It sold out, but then they changed the rules, so we had to put it in a 20,000 seater. But
Mm.
they didn't have to socially distance, so it didn't make any sense.
Right.
And then the travel thing, I couldn't do that. And people still, and bless them, they go, "Why did you cancel it?" Like I'm going to go, "Oh, I didn't fancy it.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
didn't. I just wanted to give back. I wanted to give 10,000 people their money back.
Right.
It was way too much for me.
Yeah.
It was. I don't want that sort of cash.
I don't have
I
any
want
place left to put the money.
no, no. My house is. I can't get in my house for money. So just, I'm not coming. But I know how frustrating it is, and they've waited 2 years as well. But whatever they think, it's worse for me. To them, it's they're one. If they're one person who
Right.
wanted to go out that night, I feel bad for ten
Yeah,
thousand
exactly.
people. So yeah, the stress levels are through. Well, we're going to get onto that actually because
Okay.
I've been playing away behind your back. I watched a different neuroscientist
Oh,
on YouTube.
okay. Good.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. Um, like-
That's helpful.
well, also, if I knew his name, you might go, "Oh, that idiot! He
Yeah,
was discredited
right.
like years ago. He's
He's a
mad."
pedophile. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So yeah, I've been watching this. The professor of neuroscience, and he said that over a 24-hour period of being deprived of food, water, and sleep,
Hmm.
he said that sleep would make the biggest dent in our health meters. And he
Right.
qualified it a bit more and said, that's just one day. And if he were to deprive someone, cap their sleep at 6 hours a night within a few months, doctors would see things like they're pre-diabetic and all these other
Hmm.
conditions,
I'm
right?
gonna bet this was Matthew Walker. Did he have a British accent?
He was he sort of looked blonde.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I bet it
Oh,
was anyway. But Matthew Walker is. I just had him on my podcast. But
right.
he's basically everybody's sleep guru at the moment. But yeah. So the larger point is that yeah, you can detect more pathology after 24 hours of going without sleep than you can without food, certainly, and even water, which is a
But
surprise.
I'm sure I've gone 24 hours without
Yeah,
sleep before, just
yeah.
but
I'm sure you were great to be with on the 25th hour.
No, no, but it was. I mean, when I was an Ents manager, we used to do like an all night. Or maybe it wasn't 24 hours, and I'd be exhausted. But I wouldn't be going. I mean, I can't imagine not going without food for 24 hours. I'll go without water for 24 hours. That's easy. I
No,
sometimes forget to drink water. That
you
doesn't
have it
bother
all
me.
flipped around. Food is much easier than water.
I know. Well, he said that the biggest piece of data happens every 2 years with daylight savings, where
Hmm.
the day after the clocks go forward in spring, there's a 24% rise in like heart attacks and
Hmm.
and when they go back, it goes down 21%, which is massive. That's a
Yeah.
massive increase.
Also, accidents. I mean, it's really
Yeah, accidents, road accidents.
it's
Yeah.
bad. I don't know why we still do it. It's really an idiotic tradition.
Oh, really? Do you think that? But didn't they do it? Wasn't it for the war, the farmers in the war
Yeah,
to?
yeah, but now
Right.
now we've got
Okay.
like 15 farmers. I mean, it's like it's really there's not that many. At one point, forget what percent in America, the percentage of people working in agriculture has diminished by it's just some astonishing factor over the last 75 years. It's a tiny number of people but it's just I mean we do not need to be changing the clocks. It just doesn't make
Really?
any sense.
I've
No.
never thought about it before. I assumed it was essential, but I know why it happened. But can they just? But yeah, I suppose so. It doesn't matter, does it, relative to the rest of the world? Because
No.
it's an hour either way. But surely it would have the same problems, wouldn't it? Because it's what? Why would it? Why would it change things if you didn't have it? It's just,
Well, if you're gaining, it is true. If you're paying a 20-ish% price on the one hand and then gaining that back on the other, well, then it's a net. I guess you could say it's a net zero. But
yeah.
it is just crazy to consider that when people lose an hour of sleep by the hundreds of millions, the next day or days they're prone to all kinds of problems, including fatal accidents. I mean, I think even plane
Yeah.
crashes go up. I mean, I don't know how
Really.
much of this is apocryphal, but I've certainly heard that if you look at the statistics of untimely death, everything goes haywire after daylight savings.
The thing that annoys me about it is the admin. I'll do any if there's no, just keep it whatever
Yeah,
the world is like, just keep it
it's
like that now. Do I have to do it? Changing a clock annoys me. There's clocks here that are right for the half the year because I'm
right,
not going to change them
right,
and then
yeah,
change them back
on the
again.
microwave,
So
yeah.
yeah, why bother? It's I know it's an hour fast or an hour slow or whatever. So just stop changing things. He did say an interesting thing as well. He said that when they go forward in spring, judges hand out much harsher sentences
Right,
because they're grumpy.
yeah.
I mean, that's so. This is okay. This is my question, I guess. So those things that are changed through sleep, presumably we can reduce it like everything else to electrical or biochemical functions of the body. At
Mm.
any state that it's being caused or not caused by the state of biochemistry, correct?
Yeah,
Whatever's
yeah,
doing
yeah.
it, whatever it does, right? So why haven't we got a pill that that does what sleep does? I don't mean keeps you awake, we've got that, and makes you sleep, we've got that, right? And they've all got their problems. But why haven't we got a pill that replaces all the things that sleep should be doing?
Well, we do have pills that do something that's a little more analogous to that than we used to. I mean, we have pills that are not just straight stimulants, but that work more with the machinery of sleep. Something like modafinil, which is it keeps you up, but it doesn't keep you up quite the way caffeine does. And there was research on narcolepsy, which produced that compound, if I'm not mistaken. But a general problem with pills, which is as an intervention, they are of necessity very blunt. I mean, they go everywhere. You're just dropping something into your bloodstream. It goes everywhere, and so having receptors for that compound, it's largely a matter of luck whether the receptors are specific enough in the places you want them to modulate just the thing you're trying to target and nothing else. and but that's almost never the case. So this is why pills have, virtually every pill has a spectrum of side effects, because they go
Right.
everywhere. There are analogous receptors everywhere. If you're modulating serotonin in the brain, you're also doing it in the gut. It's just not precise, and so some things can't be addressed, in a very targeted way by that mechanism, no matter how good we get at designing the right compounds. I mean, I think it's, some things, in the end, I think some things will be, we'll get very lucky, and with a perfectly targeted molecule, you will just get lucky that the receptors of interest are in more or less only the places you want to modulate. But that does seem to be more of a matter of luck than anything else in the end.
He also said something very interesting. He said that he doesn't quite understand how we even evolved needing sleep, because
Right.
it's totally counterintuitive to survival in an evolutionary sense, because it's doing everything wrong. It's not, you're not aware of predators, you're not foraging, you're not eating, you're not reproducing, you're not doing all the things you need to survive for that 8 hours. So,
Yeah.
but we know presumably it's shop closed for stock taking, isn't it? Effectively, it's doing stuff. It's presumably doing stuff that you can't do when you're awake. Or what
Yeah.
is the point?
I mean,
Yeah.
well, I guess there's one caveat to that, which is that the one thing we're not doing when we're sleeping is stumbling around in the dark, among predators that are better adapted to functioning in the dark than we are, right? So I guess you could say that there's some advantage to sleep if you're holed up in a cave or a burrow, and just not out there among the
I'd be
leopards.
making new weapons.
Yeah.
I'd be candlelight
Right.
making new weapons. That's what I do.
Yeah.
When all the other cavemen were sleeping,
Well,
right?
you do that
I
anyway, right? You're just
yeah,
you're just polishing your guns
I'd be whittling.
throughout the
I'd be
night.
whittling a new type of spear
Yeah.
that I'd never seen before, with a special tip, like a little diamond tip
the
that goes through
the leopards
mammoth.
have nothing on you. Uh, well, so
Yeah,
but I think his general point is correct, which is, given that we are, I mean, once you're mobile, once moving around is the strategy by which you would gain all the advantages of that could be selected for. I mean, I guess there's this larger question of, how, and he actually asked this at one point, like, why is the mystery isn't so much why is there sleep, it's why is there wakefulness in the first place. I mean, why did we evolve to behave? But what?
that's a hell of a twist, though, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is.
Imagine
Yeah,
pondering that
right.
question. Well,
Yeah,
this podcast wouldn't be happening, which is, I think, would be one of the, a big
it
shame
would be
for
a great loss
humanity.
to evolution and much else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why is that's interesting? So,
But
but what
but
does he
but
mean
once we're, I
though?
mean, but you do reach a tipping point that once you do have behavior, once you're out there moving around, and you're a predator, and prey by turns, then you need a nervous system that can detect better and better, everything in the environment, and you need, weapons, and you need, and then the metabolic constraints on all of that become very interesting. And then you would think there'd be this selection pressure against sleep, because if you could just stay up for 24 hours a day for the rest of your life, you could be eating and reproducing, at least, 1/3 more, if you're primates like us. And it seems that just biochemically, sleep is doing enough that nature has not found a way to select against it. Right? It's just you need those housekeeping functions desperately every 24 hours.
But we value. I mean, we value waking hours, don't we, as people, because we think that's the point of life. No one would say you can have an extra 50 years, but you're in a coma.
Right.
You'd go, no, I'll have a third. I'll have a third of that awake.
Yeah. Third of that in a club. Yeah.
Yeah. We reduced it just to that. It's either dancing and drinking, or you're in a coma. I love the idea of that. That's like all the other things that are so much better than
Yeah.
just dancing and drinking.
Right. Exactly.
I love the idea of that.
Yeah,
It's
just
just,
given 30 seconds to think about it, right? What do you
I
just
know.
checking
Like,
boxes? I'll take the club for
also,
23 years.
I mean, as if either of us would ever choose that as a
Right?
lovely
No.
way.
Thank you.
But
I'll take the coma. Give me the coma.
that that would be like hell. That would be like
Yeah.
hell, wouldn't it? I mean, dancing at all, dancing
Yes.
for 1 minute is bad enough.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
just, yeah. Well, I was thinking about as well. Go into the future or the. I'm obsessed with that. These things that we've talked about keep coming back to me. Particularly, free will is driving me mad. I'm not going to talk about it, but I
Mm,
keep finding new things. Why? Why? What does that mean? I know, and it's gonna be my undoing. I am gonna be a gibbering wreck, right? That I'm convinced by free will, but it does my head in. So,
mm,
but the thing about going to the future, would you, if you could live for 200 years, would you? Because as much as great as it would be to
mhm.
see have another 200 years, if it was good quality as well, you might get old, but you're stumbling around for another for another 150 years, right? But it's our question was, would you go into the future or the past? That was easy. We
Mm,
hadn't we hadn't talked about the pros and cons of this, which is basically seeing everyone you know and love die.
right.
And I don't think I could. I don't think I could. I'd go, no, just let's do it, even though no one wants to die, and when it comes to it, you go, "Give me another year." Given
Mhm,
that choice now, as a logical person who probably isn't gonna die today, I don't think I could have that 200 years, because it doesn't fascinate me enough. Life isn't that,
mm.
just the
Well,
longevity of life isn't that incredible
this
to me.
I think the diagnosis here is that you don't much like meeting new people at this point.
Well, that's true as
you
well.
you hate dinner
That's
parties. I
that's
think I
true
think
as
we found your
well.
problem.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if you could take your immediate family with you, then yeah, great.
But
Um,
even if you couldn't, I mean, it only took you 60 years to acquire these relationships. If you had another 140 years, you're just predicting that you'd be so bereaved, losing everyone you've currently got in your life, that you
yeah.
just wouldn't want to keep it going. But
Yeah, but imagine that though. Imagine, okay, supposing you choose 200 years, right? And everyone knows about it. Your current relationship would know
hmm,
that they were going to die and you were going to spend another 150 years without them or whatever. I don't think you could.
wouldn't
That'd be too
that would
stressful
be
and
quite a
unfair.
moment when she detected you on Tinder at the
Do you know
first
what I mean?
you opened a Tinder account just as
23.
things get dicey for her. Yeah.
It's I just I mean, I can't, it's unfathomable. Luckily, it's too unfathomable to get your head round to
But
when it comes
you
to.
do know this that many people predict this is coming. That there's I think we've mentioned him before, but your countryman Aubrey de Grey, the
Yeah.
gerontologist with a very long beard, he claims that aging really is just a series. I think it's of seven effectively engineering problems, and once we solve those problems, there will be some generation, and he's long been predicting that these people are alive today. That is essentially the last generation to die needlessly from old age. It's not to say you can't still get hit by a bus, but we will solve. There's a cohort currently alive that has achieved what he calls escape velocity with respect to aging, so that they'll be here long enough to receive the benefits of the technology that will give them, let's say, 30 good more years, and in those 30 years, that'll be long enough to bootstrap to the next innovations that will give them another 50 good years, and forward and forward and forward, so that
Well, that's
you know.
the key thing, isn't it? Though that there's lots of things there, right? There's lots of ifs, right, and probablys, right? And
Mm,
I get it because it's totally imaginable that. In fact, I don't know why we don't see as we can live this long from cavemen having a life expectancy of what 28 to 98. Yeah, I totally accept that. But
and this is
if
actually an example where the what we were saying about the targeting of drugs and their side effects probably doesn't apply very much, because when you look at the problem of senescence in cells, figuring out how to solve that problem is a system wide problem, and whatever the solution is, you can imagine in the end, you'd want to spread it everywhere, and it would do its thing regardless of cell type.
Yeah, well, I saw a TED talk of this doctor saying that the hippocampus, you do have new brain cells to this point that in an adult, by the time you're 70, you have replaced all those cells at least once.
I didn't know that. I mean, I know you're getting new cells, but I hadn't heard
What if I've
about
got it
full
wrong now?
replacement.
I felt good for about a second
Yeah,
when Sam
you
Harris
might be
said, "I
right.
didn't know that,"
Yeah,
right? And I thought,
yeah,
yeah,
I didn't know.
there you go,
That's a polite way
there
of
you go.
saying bullshit.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and I thought, oh, it's not true. I've got something wrong.
No,
I've
I
got
don't.
something
I
wrong.
actually don't. I'm just going to plead ignorance here.
now,
It's
now I have to
possible.
go through my Google and
Yeah,
YouTube history
right,
trying to put in woman, doctor,
right.
hippocampus. I go from honestly, I am like a moth when I'm on trying to learn
Mm,
stuff. There's no formal structure to my education
right,
anymore.
right.
Oh, we got actually that reminds me. We've got a question here from James. It really made me laugh.
Mm,
I asked for questions, and the most of the questions were about what we do and talk about.
mm,
And this James just asked. Right, there's two questions that
right.
really made me laugh. One is how do flies not burn their feet on light bulbs? That really made me laugh. Right, that why is James worried
Right,
about flies' feet?
right.
Right, and I couldn't answer it. I assume
Yeah.
right. But also, what does it mean to burn a fly's feet? He goes, ow. Well, you still don't just fly off. And Welsh Felix asked why are moths drawn to lights. I
Right.
think I
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
that to something to do with they're guided by the moon?
Yeah, no, I think that's a navigation issue, but
But
I'm
why do they want
hard
to
pressed to
go?
remember seeing a fly actually stay on a hot light bulb. Is that a thing? I don't have enough flies in my life, I guess.
I like the fact that James has stumped us,
Yeah,
though. I don't know.
I just
We've accepted that it's true. I'm
yeah,
sure I have seen it. No, I'm sure I have seen a fly walking
I
over
mean,
it. And when you touch it, it's
they
like
they must
150
they
degrees.
must get off pretty quickly though, right? I mean, that's interesting.
Relatively,
If in
though,
fact a
because
fly
everything.
is just happily sitting on a light bulb that you can't touch with your finger, I think that's pretty
Yeah, but why
interesting.
not though? Because he's got. They might. I think the answer is that they've got a little layer of something like thick keratin to them that it doesn't matter.
Mm,
Why don't ants freeze? Because they've got alcohol in their blood. I think they can. I think the answer is because they're better equipped for it. I don't know.
right.
There's some sort of.
Yeah.
They've got
they're
tiny shoes
they're
that we
tiny
don't know about.
robots. Yeah,
I know, yeah.
they could
Well,
be
I don't
robots.
know why he thinks we know that either, but I liked it. Yeah, I was going to ask you when we were talking last week about when time is relative and you take in more information when you see an accident or something.
Hmm.
I read that flies, and again, this is presumably metaphorical. Otherwise, I can't get my head around it again. Flies see things sort of in slow motion, like so when you go to swat a fly,
Hmm.
it sees things in slow motion. So that presumably just means its reaction times are so much faster than ours. Because
Right.
what does seeing something in slow motion mean? That can't be literal, can it?
I mean, that is synonymous with what you just said, having a reaction time that is much faster. I mean, if you think neurologically what it means to have a reaction time that's faster, it means the world is slower, right? It's just, it's like the,
In terms of perception, even though
yeah.
the same thing,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, if you can, if you can, it's like the frame rate. I mean, when you're talking about perception, it's essentially the frame rate at which you can detect changes, and if you can respond more quickly than some other organism, well, then yeah, it's like you can wait longer for the pitch to get closer to you before you swing. If you can swing faster, for the baseball or cricket analogy.
So when you look at something under a microscope, it moves around. It looks like it's moving faster, but that's presumably just the speed equals distance over time. So you're seeing it relatively when it's moved a millimeter. If it's 100 times, it's
Hmm.
moved 100 millimeters in that same time to your eye. Is that correct? So you are seeing it move faster, even though it's not moving faster because it's magnified.
That
Or am I,
I actually don't. I don't know. This is my
I always thought that when I looked down the microscope,
Yeah, no,
I'd
it's
move it a little bit and it would look like it was moving really
yeah.
fast.
I know what you mean with things jiggling. those are by definition tiny movements. But I mean, the relevance for an organism. I mean, there are organisms which move relative to their body length. They move as fast as or fast as cars move. It's like there's a
Right.
species of crab that it just run. They can run 100 body lengths a second, or maybe more. I mean, so it's analogous to you running 200 miles an hour.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that if you scaled them up, they would run that fast, because it's just the physics of things. As you get
Of
bigger,
course.
everything gets heavier, but not by the surface area, but by the volume, by the cube. So it's
So when they say an ant can lift 1,000 times its body weight,
an ant structured as an ant. Probably. I mean, it certainly wouldn't be able to run fast if it were the size of a dog. I mean, it would, or it wouldn't be able to run as fast as you would think based on being an ant, and
yeah,
might not
well,
even be able to walk around with its current body plan. I don't
you
know.
don't know. That sounds like you're dissing an ant there. You don't know
Well,
that.
it would
You
be
don't.
the
Let's give it
alternative.
a
The
chance.
alternative is genuinely terrifying.
I know. I think I remember from.
Dog-sized ants that could
Yeah, that would
function.
be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
There's a limit to insects, isn't it? Because they're spiracles that give them oxygen. It's only a certain volume an insect can be before it can't get enough oxygen due to the surface area,
Mm,
the size of the. So I think pretty much a 3 foot dragonfly was the biggest an insect could ever get.
hmm.
That's interesting. I've never thought about that before. It's relative to the size, and that's true as well. Like if an ant falls, it doesn't hurt itself, presumably because
Yeah.
the mass that isn't
Well, it's
enough
just,
to.
I think, yeah, this is it's possible we spoke about this once, but yeah, when you think about the implications of an ant falling off of from a high place, or a squirrel occasionally manages that and is unharmed, right? And or cats. But as you scale up, things get worse and worse, and a horse or an elephant jumping off a building, that's the worst possible
I just
case.
imagine someone just tuned in for the first time.
Yes.
It just sounds like the ramblings
Well, we're
of two
talking
8-year-olds.
we're
It's
talking
just
about the pressing problem of elephant suicides off of buildings.
I know. I love that. In our history, when early man discovered it could herd mammoths over the cliff to eat them, but of
Mhm.
course, about 50 died, and it could only have half a leg before they went rotten. So it was just like it was such a waste.
I
They had no freezers.
I
They had
just
no fridge freezers.
this is a lateral move, but you reminded me of an image that I can't get out of my head because it says so much about what's possible. But I was reading a book on the problem of hyperinflation. As we're in a period where inflation is being talked about, and so I decided to
Yeah.
to, to read a book about what it's like when things really get out of hand. And I didn't know this in the interwar years in Germany. I mean, I knew that.
Oh yeah, going to the shops with a barrel full of marks.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
the devaluation of the mark was so sudden and spectacular. It literally, I think
I
the.
thought we did it. I thought we dropped. I thought we dropped fake money on them.
Oh,
To
I haven't heard that. If
maybe that's not true.
no, I
I
don't. I mean,
thought.
that's a possible thing, but no, I think what happened is there was just a bunch of financial malfeasance, and also just the crushing reparations burden we put on them after Versailles. But I think in 1913 the mark was at more or less parity with the franc, and I guess I guess it was the shilling, and even the lira. I think they were all more or less at parity. And by 1923, it was 1 trillion to 1. I mean, the mark just went completely off a cliff. And so there's scenes like some policemen on horseback would ride into a town, and the mob would waylay them, throw them off the horses, butcher the horses in front of them, and carry away the meat. I mean, it was just an absolute
So
return to the.
explain to me how that can happen and what it means, because I still don't understand money. I don't understand why they just can't just stop. Say just let everything
Yeah,
slows down. Why can't we just let's start again? When it gets to be a million lira to a pound,
right.
let's start again. Let's call it 1 lira to the pound. Why can't we just
It's
start again?
it's
Let's
really
stop getting
it's really
silly.
interesting. It's I actually don't understand it as much as I should, and so at this late hour, giving myself more of an education on this topic. But it is a kind of massive coordination problem. It's a breakdown of I mean, but money is a mechanism of cooperation and trust, and it really is just an idea. I mean, just we got these dirty pieces of paper that
Yeah,
are worth something because we all agree that they're worth
yeah,
something, and
yeah.
as long as you hand me these notes, I will accept them today, and I'll accept them tomorrow, and I'll accept them a week from now. But once inflation gets going, this promise with the future breaks down, right?
Well,
And also
listen.
it provokes a spending cycle because you're now afraid that your money is going to be worth much less a week from now, and so it incentivizes spending it now, which is itself inflationary because you have
Yes.
there's a positive feedback loop that becomes catastrophic.
Well, in the beginning of the pandemic, when I was watching the news and people fighting in supermarkets and people punching each other and stealing toilet rolls and everything, I thought, if this goes on, right? You know I'm hypochondriac, right? So I went straight to lawlessness and coming to the house. I just thought there'd be a point where $1 million is not as good as an apple.
Hmm.
So I'll go give me that. I go, no, I've got an apple. I've got $1 million, and they go, well, what's money? Money's nothing. Money is absolutely
Yeah, and the
worthless.
amazing thing about interwar Germany is that it was a sophisticated society where this happened. It's not. I mean, this has happened in other places where you at least can think, well, they didn't really have all of the tools available to them of of a modern society. But what happened in Germany was just again, I'm not deep into the topic, but it really was one of these cases where you think, okay, there's no guarantee it couldn't happen right now in the UK or in the US because there are conditions you get into where you simply don't have the tools to arrest your slide, over the brink, and
Well,
it's
I remember
yeah.
when I was at college, one of my best mates, he was a psychology student, and his roommate, who wasn't quite as bright as him, right?
Hmm.
He used to do this thing where he'd play Monopoly with this guy and he'd win. And then, so he didn't take all the other guys' money. He'd say, "Well, I'll give you £100 if you make me a cup of tea." And this guy, so now this game is spilling into the real world.
Yeah.
So, and he added, and he said that you're out of money. He goes, I'll give you £1,000 if you do 10 press ups.
Right.
And this guy would do 10 press ups to stay in this game.
Right.
And I just thought that was so interesting
Uh-huh.
that, that winning the game, right, it was meaningless. It was meaningless.
Yeah.
And but it went into the real world. It's real world problems. So I can see how it happens when everyone agrees that money gets you those things, but I don't understand why it can't be stopped. I still don't understand why we just can't.
It is hard to understand that you can't find a place to reboot from when all of the real world goods are still there. It's like the farmers still have their land and their crops. The bankers still have their buildings and their suits and ties. People still need jobs done. No one has died. Everyone is standing around prepared to do the same work they were doing yesterday. And yet when the currency has collapsed, there's no way to organize that behavior, right? And so you
Right.
get chaos because just think about it. It's like you as someone who had a certain amount of money that you use to do everything in your life. I mean,
Yeah.
to pay your rent, to buy the food, to that money is now worthless. What the hell do you do,
Well,
right?
I think it is all about more and more. I think I'm not a conspiracy theorist, you know, but I do think that more and more everything is about control. I was thinking today about politics. I've never been political, and you know, in the last few years, I've become more and more political. It's not just to my age because I think politics is very frightening now, and they're blatant. And it used to be there's no shame anymore, so they just lie and deny it or admit it and don't do anything about it. And I think it's that politics now, you know, like two party politics, I think they're all in it together, really. It's like wrestling. We boo at the bad one and we cheer them, but they're in it
Mm-hmm.
together. At the end of the day, they both get paid. We've just been conned out of our money, really, and they just made this system up, and it just benefits them. And I don't know how that came along. Even democracy doesn't really work. Who was it? Was it Shaw who said if voting made any difference, they wouldn't let us do it? And I'm sort of beginning to believe that now. I assume they're there for the status quo because it suits them, isn't it? No one in power, no one in true power wants
Mhm.
anarchy, do they? Because it's dangerous for them. It's so much better.
Yeah, but
Control is so much better.
except there's, I mean, who do you know who would actually want to be in politics?
I
You,
agree.
you know,
It's the
it's
most
like
thankless time. It would. Yeah, I know.
it's selecting for a certain type of person, but it's not selecting for the kind of person I tend to know, right? It's like that. That's when I think of the smartest, most creative, most successful people I know. To a man and woman, they think being in politics would just be a nightmare. I mean,
It
why
would be
would
a
they
nightmare.
subject
Yeah,
themselves to that process?
it would be. And I think more and more. I think the good thing that's come out of this chaos is that deep down, no one respects politicians anymore, which
Although
is, I think,
I'm not sure that's good, but it is.
well, no,
Yeah,
no, until we get a
yeah,
good one,
yeah.
I think it's good. I think people. I wish people were more cynical. I think there's obviously tribalism aside. I think most people still don't really care. I think it's still easy for a politician to say the one thing that most voters care about and win the election
Mhm.
on that one thing that it is still about the South and everything. But I don't know how it got that far. That's what I don't. I think I've been naive all my life. I just thought that anyone in government was at least doing their best, and
Right.
people got their way, and it's what most people voted. And I
But I think there still is a lot of that. I mean, if you think of somebody who is, well educated and competent, they could have taken a path through life that would be more recognizable to us. I mean, they could have gone into the film business, but they
yeah,
decided to become a state senator, say
yeah.
in America. That is not a glamorous job. It's not a job where you get rich by anyone's measure. And so who's doing that job? I mean, it's just there is a nobility and provided you had some other options,
Yeah,
it has to be guided by someone's, idealistic wish to make society better. It
In
can't, I mean,
America maybe, but we know. I don't know about the wages, but like our politicians, the money is in everything but the politics. So you get a good civil servant wage, but then they push through. They do favors for companies that they might have shares in or something. So
yeah, isn't that like, well, I don't know what the laws are around. I mean, I got to think some of that's illegal, right? So that aren't people getting prosecuted for, I mean, yeah,
conflict of interest. I
yeah.
think there are. I think there are laws, and but people find loopholes, and and
But
they get
what
free
are the
trips,
economics?
and
So I mean, like in your House of Lords, are most
well,
people
lords are different.
actually
So
rich?
I think traditionally, I think they phased out peerages that are handed down,
Mm.
and I think industrialists are made lords, and it's but yeah, traditionally they were
I mean,
obviously
do you have
posh
a,
people.
this? I've spent. I'll portray my lack of experience in the UK. But it's do you have a relationship to class that seems fundamentally different to you than what we have in America?
Of course,
But
we're built on class.
that hasn't eroded. I mean, like over the last, let's say, 30 years, has the UK come to resemble
Have,
America more and more, or not?
have you seen our Tory party? They honestly, they look like a satirical cartoon from 1930.
Really?
They're they all go to Eton. I
Uh-huh.
think most of them they go to Eton, which that's not a qualification to run the country. Went to Eton.
But
That basically means rich.
it is synonymous with being rich. I mean, it's not Eton doesn't have tons of scholarships, and there's not a lot of middle class people going to Eton at this point.
No, but they're even when there is a sort of a merit to it. I saw this documentary. It was about the who were those Hollywood people who paid for their
Yeah,
kids to
yeah, that was a great
what's her
scandal.
name? Anyway, there was a documentary about it, and it's just rife. Like all those posh schools, they take 10 million from overseas students to get in there, right? And
Mm.
it's gone up and up. It's like so some people could pay 50 million to get in, and that's what gets the charts getting that you're the number one school, so you can basically charge more, and they're not meant to. It's called donations, but it's still all rigged. It's all rigged. We know for when I went to college, I think it was 6% working class people got to university, even though I got a scholarship because
Mm.
I won my place there, and so it was I got there on merit, but one of 6%, you know, and I think even to go to a better school gives you a disadvantage in a rich area. So it's still all loaded, we know that. But
What did you just said? Even to go to a better school gives you a disadvantage in a rich
no,
area?
to give no gives you an advantage.
Okay.
So even if you're not paying for your education, the fact that in olden days you could afford to live in a better area where the schools were better because it attracted better
Hmm.
teachers and were paid or whatever, it's a constant struggle. We know it's a constant struggle, and I'm not even moaning about the lack of fairness. I'm saying
Right.
that when you look at our politicians, they all went to the most expensive upper class school
Right.
probably in the world.
Well, I
It's
think
not even
we
ambiguous,
yeah, I mean we
It's
do have that. I mean, in the U.S., just an astonishing number of people got when we're talking about government at the federal level, they got law degrees from Yale and Harvard. I mean that's just incredibly common. Most Congress people are lawyers, right? Which is, I mean, they're almost no
yeah,
scientists. They're all they're virtually all lawyers. Which
yeah,
not to disparage lawyers universally, but I think we would be wise to ask whether that's really the qualification we need for running the world at this point. But
yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's a sense that, like, we don't actually. I mean, the wealth inequality is obviously a huge problem in the U.S., but class is. And we talk a lot about race. We don't talk about class very much
Well, it's
explicitly.
different, isn't it? Class is different in America. It is more of based on merit, or at least money. At least it's based on hard cash. That when we say class in Britain, we mean a snobbery. That
Hmm.
if you're an aristocrat and a working class footballer earns as much as you and moves next door to you,
Hmm.
there's still a curtain twitching going bang those goes the neighborhood. That's what often we mean by it's still this sort of secret club. It's not just money because
Yeah.
class isn't always that there are aristocrats who've got no money because they lost it all. But
Did you just give me an
there's
image?
still
This phrase "curtain twitching." Did you just make that up, or is that a
oh
phrase?
no, it's when it's I felt it when I got new money and I moved to a nice area.
Hmm.
I felt there was a little bit of curtain twitching
So, but
that
a curtain twitching means someone your neighbor is peeking out through their curtain,
a
right? Right.
posh person
Yeah.
looking through the lace curtains at
Right.
this
That's
hooligan
awesome.
who's just turned up, this lottery winner.
What a
I
great
did feel
image.
like
Yeah.
a lottery. The
Yeah.
first time I went to a posh restaurant, people sort of looked at me, and I just thought, oh, I shouldn't be here. This is
Right.
ruining their night.
Uh-huh.
I felt, you know what I mean? I felt they don't want me here. They,
You should have leaned into it and gotten some gold teeth. Gold front
yeah.
teeth.
Well,
Yeah.
well, I did when I went to university, and it was a good university. And most of the people were obviously. I didn't realize I was working class till I got to college, but I did play on it a bit because I remember when I went back for the second term, I wore my dad's donkey jacket off the building site with
Mm-hmm.
like so I did play up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, it's rife. I mean, I think the thing that confuses it now in the past 50 years is there's a new class which is celebrity class. So
Yeah.
in the sort of 60s and 70s, working class lads became soccer players and moved to nice areas and pop stars. So suddenly you were getting, Rod Stewart was richer than all the politicians and aristocrats,
Right.
and bought the big house. So that I think that's what confused it. But I have no doubt that this is still such a classist society, and it is the one that isn't talked about. It is the
But
one that's
but
bottom of the
do you think
pile.
is there still a I mean, I guess it's possible something like this exists in the U.S. I just am completely out of touch with it and have never encountered it. But do you think there's a layer of aristocracy in the UK where the old money would look down on someone like Jeff Bezos as just
Yes.
nouveau
Oh no, that
riche,
that that's
nouveau
true as
riche.
well. Yeah, that it's not it, that it. But I mean, even when like American industrialists were coming over, they were trying to marry aristocrats.
Hmm.
It was like they were laundering their class.
Right, right.
So
Yeah,
you
that's
know what I mean?
Downton Abbey. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, it makes me sick. But you know what? I don't care. I don't care enough. I
Good.
don't care enough. I could never be a revolutionary. I just couldn't be bothered. I
Spoken like a man with gold teeth in a posh restaurant.
couldn't be bothered with gold teeth.
Just count your
I
money.
couldn't.
Just
Who
count your
needs
money.
teeth?
Yeah, yeah.
I get. Someone said to me once, "With all your money and you got those awful teeth," and I just sent back, "My butler chews it for me first." Um, do anything with money. Good, good.
Well,
At least it's sort of real. At least it does real things, doesn't it? If you've worked.
yeah.
Although I am very conscious of it.
Until we get hyperinflation, that's
Well,
the
I
amazing
mean,
moment where I mean a trillion to one,
yeah,
no one is left standing. I mean, Jeff Bezos is in rags when
yeah,
with that kind of devaluation.
yeah, yeah. That would put all the paradigms back to zero, wouldn't it? Because what
Yeah.
would it be then? What would decide things? I suppose. So if you saw this coming and you put your billions into a big house with gun turrets,
Hmm.
right? A water tank, petrol pumps, private jets, helicopters, right? A little army,
Hmm.
just sleeping, just in a coma, a little army in a coma, right? That then you think, well, no, that's real, isn't it? Then you could beat the system.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Except I forget if I ever mentioned this to you, but there are billionaires who have thought this through and have gotten dual citizenship in New Zealand and begun building compounds, and but there has actually been conversations about the game theory around how you protect yourself from the bodyguards you've hired to
yeah. I thought
to
of that as
protect you
well.
in your
Yeah, no,
compound.
I think of that as well. That what the well, that's what power is, isn't it? In governments, whether when a dictatorship takes hold, whether it's left wing or right wing,
Mm,
the reason they're in power is because the army's on their side. That's why they're in power.
mm,
If the army went, well, no, we're working class, we're the proletariat,
right.
they'd be in trouble.
Yeah.
So yeah, the only thing to do is to have some sort of immortality, right? Or superpower, so you can just fly off. That's what.
You want to be the
But you,
200-year-old man when
yeah, no,
when
just
the world
like
goes off a
Iron
cliff.
Man.
Yeah.
I no, but you just be bulletproof and you just take off out of
Mm.
all danger. So that's what you put your money to, isn't it? Like a some sort of suit that
The
makes you
flying suit
fly around the
that
world.
needs to be powered by plutonium that you have to get from your Iranian friends.
Well, you put down my pill instead of sleep idea. So I'm not going to run any more inventions past you because you just you take the wind out of my sails when you, you're not into it. If I was to say to you, right, I've got an idea, Sam. I just need 1 million of your money.
Mm.
It's a pill you can have instead of sleep, and you just you wouldn't invest, would you?
I would need
I've
to
done
know.
none of the science. That's all I've
I
thought
would
of. So
need.
I've got
You're gonna if as long as you tell me which YouTube videos you watched
I
to
know,
hatch
yeah.
this plan.
I'm gonna try and I've got to find that doctor now who said that you replaced all the. I'm sure it was the hippocampus cells. By the time you're 70, you've completely replaced them at least once. I've got to
Listen,
find it now
I
and send
feel
it to
like
you.
mine have been replaced at least once because
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, mine have
it's
been
not working.
replaced for ones that are much worse than the
Yeah,
ones I had at the
yeah.
beginning.
I feel like
That's
I
my
got your old
problem.
ones.
Yeah, no inflation. Selling hippocampus cells. I've got 1 billion neurons
Mm.
for 50 quid.